Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's jointly hosted webinar by myself, Samantha Manning of Searches UK. And today we're kindly joined by Neil Wood at Future Climate Info. I just wanted to double check, can everyone hear me clearly? If you can you just let me know in the chat or the questions pane? That would be great. Also, if you have any questions that you would like to ask or you'd like any further information, please do let us know in the chat and the questions pane. And what we'll do is do a little Q&A at the end of the session. Alternatively, if you would like to contact myself or Neil after the webinar, we'll give you our contact details at the end of today's session. We just wanted to make you aware that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a copy of the recording after the webinar has ended. But for now, what I'll do is hand over to Neil, but thank you all so much for attending.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much, Samantha, for the introduction. My name is Neil Wood. I'm Senior Business Development Manager here at FCI, so hopefully you've come across us before. If not, we are an environmental report provider. Been in the market for 7 years now, since 2014, so you may well have heard of Groundshaw and Landmark in the market. So FCI are the third environmental report provider. Do a series of different environmental reports, as you would imagine. We're going to concentrate on one that is having a bit of a resurgence, really, is planning and certainly neighbourhood change, which there's a lot of information in the news that we're going to refer to today in today's session. Got a few case studies as well. So I'm going to give you that intelligence today, and hopefully something will be able to resonate with you that you'll be able to talk to your clients all about in the coming days and weeks. But before we go into that, it's well worth mentioning that we've got a free CPD conveyancing seminar in association with Searches UK. Putting the session on in association with HM Land Registry, who are going to be key speakers. I'll be speaking as well, and we're going to be talking about things that have hit the news, changes to dynamics within the reports and subject areas, all within the last 18 months, 2 years, whilst you've been extremely busy with your heads buried in conveyancing matters. So take a note of the venue that's closest to you, make a note of the dates and timings. We're trying to do it in the morning so you can get back to the office for more pressing matters later in the day. I'll put this slide back up before the end, so if you didn't get a chance to write it down, we'll certainly be able to do that right at the end of the session. So this is me. If you've seen me before, hello again. The duration of the session is going to be about half an hour today. And we're going to give you an overview of the planning and neighbourhood change issues that have been in and around for the last decade. There's a lot of case studies now starting to appear, which is good. It gives you some substance to your communications. Planning is something that wasn't greatly taken up when I started in the industry. It's probably less than 10%. And I would think that that's more than doubled now. Certainly become more prevalent. And planning, as we know, there's a lot of new build properties coming on stream, and we're going to talk about that more within the presentation as well. And we're going to have a look at what sort of reports are available to you, and can you rely on them? That's the important thing. Does your client want to understand planning matters, and do you want to put that as part of your pack? And obviously you can discuss that with Searches UK if you'd like to do that. So we're going to have a little bit of a look at the highlights to the planning system over the last decade. Each had an intended outcome, but some have been more successful than others. We're going to have a little look at the Localism Act, SHILAs or SHLAs as they're called, Neighbourhood Planning Act. We're going to go then into more case studies, and we've got a few juicy ones in there for you, as well as the reporting solutions that we mentioned as well. So just setting the scene, obviously people are choosing more homes now in rural areas as they want more green space, they want more parks, they want more outdoor living. Obviously we're being tied up in our properties in lockdowns over the last 18 months, and there's a demand for houses with gardens and families who want the children to be able to play outside and not stuck in a flat or similar type property. And according to Savills in 2020, the country house style market increased by over 5%, which is in line with the headlines that you've probably been reading for the last 6 to 12 months. And it has been the strongest performing sector in the whole market. with a shift from city living more into the rural suburbs. And there's going to be a lot of disruption in accordance with those transitions of development. And what we're going to do is look at that on the next slide. When you get big development plots in the area, how is that going to affect you if you're living close by? And if you look at the biggest impacts of neighbourhood change in regards to having a development of 100 or 1,000 properties close to your property, you're going to get all these typical sorts of issues. You're going to get everything from the sort of construction noise, the additional traffic. The quality of the air is going to diminish because you're going to get a lot of dust in the area. You're going to get a lot of vibration. You may not get your children to school on time because of all the traffic and transport bringing goods and services to the area and away again, especially if you're in a rural community. There's not many roads in and out of any particular town or village, and there'll be a high level of disruption. Obviously, you're going to get a loss of green space as well, with the demands on the housing targets as they are at the moment. And obviously, if you are building, then you need to have infrastructure to support that. You've got to have new roads in some cases. What about new schools, hospitals, sports and recreational facilities, things of that nature? So there's a lot of things to consider when planning applications go in, especially for new build developments. So planning information is key. There's a lot to bear in mind. Planning information is, of course, already in the CON29 inquiries for local authorities. However, listed planning history relates only to the property in question. And to appreciate the surrounding activity in full, an interested party can access the local planning authority website. However, many of these websites simply contain a list of planning applications, so a quick appreciation of the proximity or location of some of these applications in respect to a property can sometimes be near impossible. So that's why we've put together the FCI report, which does give the whole picture. It gives a list of potential planning, but it also maps it out successfully, so you can see from a visual point of view how that might impact you. I mean, there is positives as well as negatives in regards to planning. I mean, positives, if you're looking to purchase a property on a particular street, and you can see there's been a lot of garage conversions, loft conversions, extensions, that's actually going to put value onto your property because you know that you can do exactly the same. There's a good chance that you're going to get approval because everyone else on the street has had that as well. So it's not always a negative. Yes, there's disruption, but there's also positive disruption as well, where you could actually benefit and add property value. So we've had a decade of change, so I'm just going to go through some of those changes with you now. So we can see on the left-hand side, we've got 2011, we've got the Localism Act. This was the decentralisation of power from Whitehall to local councils. It was introduced by the Minister of Decentralisation, cracking title. It abolished the regional development of strategies instead of allowing neighbourhood plans subject to inspection and referendum prior to adoption. It required local authorities to develop housing allocation schemes, recording housing priorities. And then in 2014, we got the SHELAs or SHLAs. This is the Strategic Housing and then Economic Land Availability Assessment, which is a bit of a mouthful, which effectively is looking for plots of land suitable for development. And every town and city in the country will have a SHLA inventory, if you like. And so these are things that you've got to be aware of. If there's an empty plot of land behind a property that's been derelict, there's a good chance that could have been earmarked for development and could appear on one of these lists, which still exists today. And then we've got the Neighbourhood Planning Act, which was introduced to strengthen neighbourhood planning by giving plans full legal effect from an earlier stage, removing the red tape and improving the momentum. And then we had in 2020 the generic overhaul, changes to the planning system, incentives, targets for councils, driving forward with some pretty ambitious targets, really. So we go into the Localism Act, and it was there to decentralise power away from Whitehall and back to the hands of local councils. The previous system led developments being delayed or blocked due to objections with impacted housing growth. It empowered local communities to take responsibility for planning through neighbourhood planning. You've got local communities granting planning permissions by way of neighbourhood development orders, or NDOs, and community right to build orders, which are CBOs. Community right to build scheme halved the average cost of a neighbourhood development plan from 86,000 down to 40,000. So it's quite successful in its mission. It was designed to fast track planning applications and also acted as a community right to build for more small scale developments. And if we look at the pros and cons of this particular act, you can see the pros there was giving local people ownership, removing a lot of the red tape, speeding things up, reduce the cost of neighbourhood development plans, which, as I mentioned, they did that quite successfully. The cons: priority of locals may not be to help meet housing demands, loss of control for developers, and increased consultation, which has led to having slower builds. And now we move on to the SHLAs, or Sheilas, the Strategic House and Economic Land Availability Assessment, which is a mouthful in itself. So councils are required to identify a list of potential housing sites for, they've got to have a 5, 10 and 15-year plan effectively. They've got to allocate land that is fit and suitable for development and have a register in accordance with that. As we know, some councils are going to find land easier than others. And that's why, as we mentioned in the next point, is greenbelt land is going to be coming under scrutiny. And you may well find that greenbelt sites are going to be accommodating this growth, and it's going to be changing the greenbelt land in and around major towns and cities for many, many years to come. I mean, if you've heard of the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, that was brought in to encourage brownfield sites to be developed on first. Obviously, we've got a lot of industrial past, a lot of brownfield sites, and the government will encourage developers to take brownfield land first. It's in our interest to get that land redeveloped because it's already been built upon once before. Developers do like to have greenfield and greenbelt land for the very reason that there's going to be very little pollution and contamination in that ground and in that soil because it's never been built on or used before. So they rub their hands together when they can get hold of greenbelt land because they can build successfully and know they're not going to get any major risks in the build once they start digging. They're not going to have any potential contamination to eradicate and dig out, and that eats into their profit margins. So they know that they can build, sell the properties, move on very, very quickly and take their money. Whereas a brownfield land, there's a lot of unknowns because we can't see what's beneath the ground without a lot of soil sampling, testing and boreholes and so on. So you can understand why developers would want greenbelt land first. And greenbelt land, everybody wants to protect it. And there's crowdfunding type pages for trying to support an area around Coventry very recently where it was earmarked for developments. And people wanted to literally take these items to court and challenge them. We don't want it on our doorstep type analogy. And you've also got the news picking up these particular headlines very readily now. 400,000 homes is going to be built in rural land in the south of England to meet the government's house building targets. And we're going to go over those targets very, very shortly as well. And then we came to the generic planning overhaul, which was March 2020 from the Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, and we saw a lot of him on television at the time with his Planning for the Future paper, making it easier for developers to demolish vacant properties, building homes above existing buildings, so you can build upwards, you can build outwards, 3 or 4 meters, depending on whether you're a semi-detached or a detached without planning permission, incentivising council planning departments to support the development of more homes. So the government was also launching a register of brownfield sites to encourage councils to make the most of this land first, but not exclusively, obviously. And in an absence of available land, there's going to be a presumption in favour of development if they can't find a good enough reason to object to a development being in this area. And obviously major defences of building in any area typically are, it's just not maybe suitable, maybe on a floodplain or something along those lines. So there is a deadline of December 2023 for all councils to have up-to-date local plans. So we're going to keep our eyes out for those. And we've got land zoning. So sites zoned for growth will receive automatic permission as long as developers adhere to the locally drawn up design guides. Permitted development. This was brought forward from the 1st of August at the time, much earlier. And under the new systems, council will only be able to turn down those applications on very limited grounds that we mentioned before, including flood risk, floodplains, noise pollution, and inadequate natural light. So obviously it's in favour of permitted development, which we mentioned before. Unused commercial buildings granted new permitted development will be converted into homes in a fast-track way prior to approval, available for premises of less than 1,500 square metres in size and for premises that have been vacant for 3 months or more. And then came the planning bill. So the planning bill was announced in the Queen's speech on the 11th of May. It's the biggest overhaul to building rules in over a generation and bids to ease controls and boost house building. So as I mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of new properties built in the coming years, 300,000 new homes per year until 2025, which is a hell of a lot, considering that last year there was only about 100,000 new homes built, mostly due to COVID, but the average for the previous few years has been about 200, 230,000 new homes. So they've got to do a third more, near enough, for the next 3 or 4 years to meet these targets, which is extremely difficult. The new bill will introduce a move from a document-based planning system to a more digital one. I think we can understand that. We're getting into a more digital age. Long gone are the days where we're sort of printing one copy off for the client, one copy off for ourselves. We've moved to more PDF based, and certainly from our reporting point of view, we're going to be going more and more digital as time progresses with case management systems and things that you use as well. So that's where the future is. It's very digital, and we can expect that with the planning side of things as well, which hopefully will tidy things up a little bit. So a little bit of a summary without going too deep into it. There's a pressure on councils to build more homes, more than there ever has been before. Urban expansion on rural fringes. So we've mentioned not just brownfield sites, greenfield sites and green belt sites are going to be identified. Greenfield, just to give you an idea, is like farmers' fields or sports fields. Green belt land is the area that protects a town from sprawling out of control, and it could be protected local wildlife and things like that. So not to confuse the two. The need to pay close attention to land and its use and its changing with planning permissions as well, especially land acquisition. Prior failed applications, they may come back. So areas that maybe haven't passed the planning stage for a new build development 5 or 10 years ago may suddenly be considered now because the pressure on the local authority has been much greater. And if they can't relinquish land in other areas, it may well be going back to areas that have been previously refused. We looked at land zones, permitted development, incentives for councils. These are only ever going to increase. The human impact of neighbourhood change is a big one. The reality of it is, if you had a development across the road from you now, you're going to really suffer as a result of noise, traffic, the air quality, loss in view, if you've got one, and potentially the value of your property as well. So it's big news, big things to consider. And the role of planning data in searches is just getting greater. And it does expose these potential issues, as the case studies I'm going to show you will reveal. So we've got some case studies planned. So we're going to go through those. We've got about 4 of them, I think. So we're going to look at case study number 1. So several properties. This is also common. This is the West Midlands, backed onto an orchard of fruit trees. So it's nice to have a view like that in your back garden, as you can see identified on the photograph on the left-hand side. Unfortunately for the property owners, the land was acquired by developers and it was approved in February 2020. So the first image shows the land with the orchard behind it, and the second shows the land under development, which you can see is pretty shoehorned into a cul-de-sac. So what they probably imagined would never be built on has suddenly now got a property that it's earmarked for that location. And as you can see, when you put the plan on top of it, it just looks like a redundant area. These are exactly the sort of areas that developers are looking for. And in some cases, they'll even look to see whether they can purchase a property to knock it down to create a road or potential road through that area to the field beyond. So this is how creative developers are trying to become. So it's well worth consideration if you're moving into a community where there is a bit of open space. So we've got the views here and all the pictures that are associated with it before and after construction, and this is as recent as 2021. And as you can see, you know, starting on the left-hand side, you've got the lovely back garden there with the orchard in the background, and then development starting on the subsequent photographs. And you can see that it's already up to 1 story, with the scaffolding going a bit higher than that, indicating it will be a 2-story property. And you can see it's going to overlook the property that we're in at the moment, which is really unfortunate, and not a lot that they could do about that. So the only thing they could potentially do is put some large conifers maybe or something of that nature at the rear of their garden to prevent them being overlooked, but it certainly could diminish the value of the property. They're suffering through the noise and disruption that this build will bring as well. So it's well worth knowing about this before you move into a property. It was featured in the news, as you can see on the right hand side. It was taken from the Daily Mail on the 30th of March this year. So the plans for this particular house were passed in February 2020. Despite widespread objections, as you would understand, from neighbours and the parish council, residents feared that the house prices will plummet as a result of it, especially when you've got a 450, nearly £500,000 home. You don't want to be overlooked in your back garden, do you? The council's local plans earmark developments for a further 1,700 new properties for the village. This is going to be very, very topical and on the increase rapidly in all the towns and villages in and around you right now. So it is an example of where councils have been under pressure to meet housing targets. And albeit this is only 1 or 2 properties in question, you know, the pressure is just going to mount. Case study number 2. This is urban expansion in Maidstone in Kent. So we can see 2 shots here of the chosen property with nice open views to the front. It's on a nice country A road with nice fields beyond that. The area is mainly rural, but urbanisation is steadily encroaching onto it, and it's eventually going to cover the area all in and around it as well. With the developments expanded over the last 7 years. So you've got a lot of HGV traffic going past this particular property. And as we identify it, we've got a bit of overhead photograph to look at now. So we've got the first image here, which is 2013. So this is showing the property surrounded completely by open fields and a really beautiful place to live. And you're going to see that that's going to change if we keep our eye on the fields in front of it. So what you can see now on the left-hand side of the screen there on the image from 2015 is the start of the major development. So there would be concern about noise, dust and vibration. A lot of vehicles coming past this location. There's only 1 major road, and you can see it goes right past our chosen property. So you'll get all of the disruption that goes with that. And then what we do, we go forward to 2020, and you can see the major development now is in the empty field, or what was the empty field, directly opposite this chosen property. So you've now got several hundred extra properties making use of that road and facilities in and around that area. So your image of the property from your front window outwards, which used to be a field, is now a housing development. So will that affect the price of your chosen property or your desire to live there in the first place? Possibly. So unfortunately, it didn't stop there for this particular house. The FCI Premium Plus planning report revealed a further development within 100 metres of this property for a pub/restaurant, a creche, a day centre and a school. So you can see where the arrow's pointing there. It's to a number 3. Your eyesight's got to be good to read it, but it is a 3. And the 3 within the report identifies there the planning applications you can see in the larger text on screen, which is 102 metres west of the chosen property. So major developments tend to be in an orange circle, as you can see, rather than uncategorised, which could be like a loft extension or something like that. So this is big disruption. And obviously, if you've got a planning report saw that there was going to be a development opposite your property. There's also going to be disruption with daycare, buildings, schools, restaurants, and all the traffic and noise that goes with that. Are you going to want to buy this property? Possibly not. Case study number 3, which is in Yorkshire. So you've got £600,000 4-bedroom property in Wixley in York. It's a small village. It's got about 62 properties to it, as you can see by the overhead photography on the right-hand side, identifying clearly where our chosen property lies. A Premium Plus planning from FCI was ordered on the 6th of February. There was planning identified for this particular property. And when we got the results back, you can see the village there, and you can see these concentric circles. And what we do, just to give you an idea, is for a city, we will look 250 metres away, because obviously there's going to be a lot of planning applications within that 250 metres if you're in a city centre. We move out to towns with 500 metres search radius, and in this case, because it's a rural location, we'll look, as the key indicates on the top right-hand side there, 750 metres away. And we do that because invariably, like this photo shows, is you've got 2 major trunk roads coming into the area. That is all. So if there is a major development, you'd want to know about it, because it's going to seriously disrupt traffic in and around your property and may delay you getting to work or getting your kids to school, something like that. So as you can see, with the next bullet point, planning data reveals several small extensions within 100 metres. So you can see there's a lot of blue circles in this particular image. These are uncategorised, so it could be your loft extensions, your garage conversions, things of that nature. The ones we are going to be paying particular attention to are the orange indicators, which are developments, as you can see by the key again on the top right-hand corner. So the first one to be identified, we've got Dixon Hill Farm here, identified on point number 15. And this is just outside of 750 metres, as you can see. FCI have got a feature called FCI Capture. So if it's slightly outside 750 metres, we will look for other planning applications and developments, just in case anything could disrupt your quiet enjoyment of this property. The reason I've identified this particular one, point number 15, 827 metres away, is this was an application dated the 22nd of January, with our report only generated less than 2 weeks later. So it's picked up the very, very latest planning information. So you can rely on it to pick up current affairs, the current planning applications on every single application you make. The really interesting one is point number 11, which is just off the map at the bottom. This is 856 metres away, and this was for 4,000 residential dwellings, 2 primary schools and associated infrastructure. And it's one of the biggest we've found, 4,000 properties. It's huge. There's going to be a ginormous amount of disruption, and it's literally just off the map at the bottom, going off this major road, which is Station Road. So you can imagine the amount of extra traffic in construction traffic that's going to be occurring building that for a considerable amount of time. So it could be a 2 or 3 year development plan. Not only that, once the development is actually built, it's up and running, people have moved in, there's a very good chance you're going to have another 4,000 to 6,000 cars on the road in that location, with every property having at least 1 car. So do you want to move to that location knowing the disruption that may ensue? Possibly. So I've got another case study for you now, which is Butland Motel. So we've got a farm property in Butland in Berkshire with an equestrian facility, beautifully rural location, nice and spacious, stables, in its own ground with nice rural aspects to it. When we did the FCI planning report for this particular property, you can see clearly there on the front cover, under developments, we've got 2 within 750 metres clearly identified. So as we look at the map, you can see it from a visual aspect. You can see point number 2 and 3. Those are the 2 developments in question. And you can see what we've got here on the text in front of us. We've got the demolition of a single-storey building, removal of existing telecommunications. So it's just a telecommunications mast, a 20-metre mobile antenna. The other was construction of 79 bedroomed motel and diner with drive-through and a car park. So that is quite significant because you're going to be getting a lot more traffic to the area. There could be a bit of noise with it being a diner. You're going to get a lot more disruption than it would be a general property development. And sorry, just go back the screen. The diner itself and the motel was subject to a newspaper article, in fact, where the homeowners denied knowledge of the motel. They sold the property for about £1 million. The new homeowners moved in, found out that there was going to be this motel with drive-through and so on associated with it, and decided they wanted to sue the homeowners because they had an inkling that they knew that that motel was there, which the seller denied ever knowing anything about. It was later proved in court that they did know about it. They'd actually been to local meetings to oppose it, as you would do with it being a few hundred metres, 382 metres away from your property. And they were successfully sued for £300,000. So it just goes to show that these planning reports are very, very accurate. They can unearth these little gems of information which, you know, would reduce the house price. £1 million property, you know, is a big ticket item, and certainly if you knew that, you'd probably be offering less, and that was their argument in court, which was successful. So it was pleasing to see it come up on our planning report successfully. We've got new planning laws coming into the UK, which is allowing energy storage projects over 50 megawatts to come in line without going through national planning processes. This could pave the way for major expansion of battery storage facilities now across our towns and cities to support green energy use. And obviously with what's going on Britain's forecourts at the moment, you can understand why battery storage might well be a thing of the future. And you know, the scale of them, there's going to be 100 large-scale battery installations now being built, and they're going to be identified within major towns and cities. So they should also be identified within our planning reports as well. So that's something that's going on right now, and it's all in line with getting us down to the zero carbon emissions by 2050. So having a look at the reporting solutions from FCI, we've got several options for you. So we've got two different types of reports. You can have the planning standalone report, which you can see on the screen now, and it will identify various different elements of planning, everything from small extensions to large developments. And we also have everything in between, whether that's a change of use or whether you've got a new telecom tower or mobile mast going to be coming into the local area. So it's got to be clean, got to be easy for the home buyer to pick up and use. And out of all the reports we do, probably flood and planning are the ones that the home buyer tends to look at the most and probably will understand the most because of the mapping that we put within the reports themselves. So they can see quite clearly the distances and they can see quite clearly the visual elements to it. The other way of obtaining a planning set of data is to put it in conjunction with the environmental report you enjoy already, which is your contaminated land, the environmental section. You've got flood, you've got the ground stability, we've got air quality, which is again very, very important. We put that in all of our reports now. So if you've got children with asthma and so on, you might want to consider an area that's got better air quality, for example. And you've got energy and infrastructure as well. So all identified on the report you can see on the right-hand side. So energy and infrastructure will pick up things like wind farms, solar farms, nuclear power stations, railways, HS2, things of that nature. So if you want an all-encompassing report with planning applications identified as well, you can find it in this report. You'll only ever get considerations within planning, energy and infrastructure and ground stability because they are subjective risks. For example, if it's a wind farm, I might not want to live near a wind farm or want to see one out of my window, but other people really like them. So therefore it's a subjective risk. So we can't put a further action onto that. So it will always say identified, as it does do on the front page of the report. You can see there. So you can see our planning data. We're always trying to improve the data quality that we've got and the location accuracy. Also, we do stress test all of our reports against our competitors, and in some cases, the case studies that we've shown you today, our competitors didn't pick up on some of them. So we're quite proud of the fact that we do have the FCI capture to look dynamically beyond the boundaries that we would typically look for, so 750 in the case studies that we've looked at today. So if it does fall just outside of that, we want to make sure that that information is captured as well, and we go extra lens to ensure that you are protected from those 4,000 property home developments that might just have fallen outside previously and not been picked up historically. So as you can see now, within the report itself, we'll try and be as clear as we possibly can. You've got the planning map on the left-hand side, clearly identifying the subject property in the middle there. Everything's colour-coded, as we saw on the key when we pulled that one up. Everything is numbered, so you can follow it sequentially as you thumb through the report itself. And the dynamic buffers are the 250, 500 and 750 metres I mentioned before. Section 2 talks about planning guidance. With section 3, the categories of the different applications, which we saw on the front cover of the planning report a couple of slides ago, with telecom masts and small applications and so on. Each application itself within the report, as you can see ringed on the right-hand side, we give you the planning reference, the application date, the address of the property, we give you a description, we give you the full status, whether it's been approved or withdrawn, or with conditions, and we give you, importantly, the distance and the direction from the property in question. So we saw a few at 800 metres away before, and it's quite crucial to understand how far these developments are from your property and whether you want to advise your client accordingly. We also have restrictions such as conservation areas clearly highlighted and mapped within the reports. Listed buildings are in there as well, and also national parks. So if a client's moving to an area that they're unfamiliar with, these areas are clearly identified within the reports as well. And this is a classic example I pulled out of a report literally last week for you, showing listed buildings. So you can see the sort of brown circles there on screen going down the main road. All those are listed buildings. And then we've got areas of outstanding natural beauty where it will be very, very difficult to get any planning applications through. So if you live in an area opposite one of the yellow shaded areas, there's a good chance that area of land will not be developed on. So in summary, we've got the two reports for you. You can buy the standalone planning report, and you can also buy the planning report as part of your everyday environmental risk due diligence as well. We keep it as comprehensive and as current as we possibly can, and we do the data scraping of the local authorities' planning records on a weekly basis. So as we sort of saw in one of the case studies, anything that is a week or two old, we are picking up quite readily now. And we've got the FCI capture we've mentioned a couple of times now. So it's great value for money in completing all your risk coverage for your client, making sure you do capture everything that they are going to be interested in. They don't want any untold surprises once they have moved in, like that motel example that we gave you. Fully supported other products. So like I said before we finish today, make a note of those dates for the free CPD seminars kindly being put together by Searches UK, with HM Land Registry, Stuart Title and ourselves at FCI speaking there. So you can meet me and we can discuss everything that's gone on in the market over the last couple of years you may well have missed. And we're doing that in Leeds, Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester, London and Nottingham, with the first three happening in the next sort of 6 weeks or so. So please put a note of that in your diary. And any further questions, of course, you can get in contact with Searches UK directly. I'm sure they'll follow up with you and ask for your feedback and comments and what you'd like to do with your conveyancing pack. And if there's anything in regards to the technical details that you've seen today or any questions that you've got, please do ask at admin@futureclimateinfo.com. So I don't know if Samantha's on and wants to add anything to that.
No, I am here now, and I just wanted to say thank you all so much for attending. Obviously, we appreciate how busy you are with the looming stamp duty deadline coming up. So thank you all so much for attending. We really appreciate it. As Neil said, we are hosting a series of free nationwide seminars, so we'll hopefully see you there. Good luck for the rest of today, and if you have any questions, do let us know. We'll speak to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.